Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game rules by Chaosium. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try very hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., which may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your keeper. Previously on the Old Ways podcast.
Greetings from beyond the grave. By now, I'm sure you've learned that what I've left you is a whole heap of trouble.
What I need to know, what Jackson is asking for is, who here among you is willing to continue?
I'm just saying it could get a little rough at Teddy's.
I have a shotgun.
I'm not that rough.
I will make sure that Miss Carlyle has an hour of time, around 3 o'clock. We're back for another episode of the Old Ways podcast. Thank you for joining us. As always, I'm your keeper, Keeper Michael. And to my right, I have
Lonnie, who's playing Lawrence Edward Oliver Forsyth, who can't remember his own name for some reason.
Well, we'll get to that. You'll eventually.
Also, he's going to jail.
You are going to jail. You are going to jail. And then to his right,
I'm Morgan. I play Lillian Lane, and I'm going for some Italian.
Well, whoa. Sounds personal. At the end of the table,
I'm Jake. I'm playing Jack Doyle, and I'm also going for some Italian.
Whoa.
And then finally,
this is James. I'll be playing Dr. Sigmund Tattenbach, who is also going to jail. I prefer to go for Italian, though. This seems like the short end of the stick.
Italian jail? Or, no.
Right.
So we will lift the curtain tonight on Dr. Tattenbach and Mr. Forsyth heading to a train station. So after a short bit of research, gentlemen, what you found is that the easiest way to get to Sing Sing prison is to take a train. You've actually found that a train goes directly to the prison. That the city that Sing Sing's actually located in, there's a train station that drops you off at the prison and then continues on.
Convenient.
Very convenient.
Yeah, bloody convenient.
So Sing Sing's been around for a really long time, actually. By the time you get there in 1925, it'll have been around for several years. And it has developed a rather specific reputation.
It's very notorious.
Place for the hardest of the hard.
Yes, it actually houses most of New York City's most dangerous criminals. And then recently, within the past few years, had something of a different sort of building built there. One that has been termed the Death House. And that Death House is where they electrocute people.
At a rather large rate.
Yes. They are electrocuting hundreds of people a year.
Yeah, I forget exactly what the warden's name is, but he's very liberal in his use of juice to fry things.
Yes, it's actually Warden Laws. That's his last name.
Okay.
He is an advocate of the use of the chair, even though there are many people, including reporters, who deem that the entire experience just disgusting. He continues to use it. So the facade is an austere and blank canvas as you arrive. You wonder what possible rest someone might be able to find in such a place. The cold air kind of brushes through the train as you roll up to almost getting deeper and deeper into your bones. There's a definite smell that comes from the Hudson because the prison sits on the Hudson River. As you approach, you see no obvious doors. And you wonder, how does one get out? let alone get in. The train kind of comes to a slow halt, and several people get out, and most of them walk towards the nearby town. Only a couple head off the platform and then across the bridge to what you find is two large, rectangular, black doors.
Wrought iron?
No, these are... Well, I suppose they probably would be iron doors,
Plate
but they're...
iron.
Yes, plate iron,
Rolled
not wrought
ste-
iron.
Rolled iron. Yeah.
Yes.
Rolled iron, plate steel.
Yes, no cold rolled steel jokes from Game of Thrones, please.
Right.
But to say that this 3-floor structure, these massive cell blocks, are ominous would be an absolute understatement. The depth and the weight of this prison alone crushes you before you walk in the building.
Mr. Forsyth, I'm glad to say that we are not staying. I've never been so glad to say that I'm not staying in a place.
You see a couple of guards kind of move out from nearby, not doorways, but nearby cuts in the building. You would never have known they were there walking up. They stop the person who's in front of you, and they give them a solid, firm pat down. And then they escort them to a nearby area where they open one of those black iron doors, and you can hear the metal on metal creak. And you just catch your first glimpse inside the prison yard, and the barbed wire, the rolled barbed wire on the windows inside is something of a sight. You see a long line of men marching together, their hands on the shoulders of the men in front of them, and they're being drilled to march in lockstep. And you can hear the shoes, the heels of their shoes, kind of click back and forth, and the sound itself kind of rides up your arm and into your neck. And you hear a smack as one of the guards uses his baton on one of the men who have fallen out of rhythm.
This is horrible.
You get approached by a man in a black uniform. Looks like a policeman's uniform, but it's all black.
Yeah.
Help you, gentlemen?
Yes, we're here to see Mr. Hilton Adams.
Adams, huh? All right. Step over here, please. He points to a section by the wall. You get put up against the wall, and you get patted down.
Fortunately, I brought no weapons with me this time around.
That is fortunate. Doctor, they take your cane.
I figured safe one.
After they look at it a little bit. They move it around. They see that it comes out.
That is a sword in there. I tell them, full disclosure, that is a weapon. Do you have another cane that I may use while beyond the premises?
I'll see if I can get you one.
Wunderbar.
Probably not.
They usher you both inside, directly inside the doors. And then, after a moment, you hear another creak behind you. And the slow metal grate of the door shuts.
This would be a perfect time for a prison riot, I think, internally.
The internal bands and kind of clockwork lock of that front door cinches back into place. And you feel a little trapped.
Not just a little.
You know, even though I know we've done nothing wrong, Mr. Forsyth, let's make this quick.
Doctor, I am in full agreement.
The guard comes back out, and he says, "We don't have a cane. You're going to have to just make do."
Fantastic.
I will take the doctor's arm.
Thank you.
Or the doctor will take my arm.
Adams is down here. You see a really, really long walk.
Yeah.
By your kind of learned eye, Mr. Forsyth, you figure it's about a mile.
Jesus. This place is vast.
All right. Well, I begin.
You cope as best you can.
Probably take occasional a break or two on the way down, a moment or two to stop. And
Do you know what hurts you the most? It's not so much being without a cane. It's watching the men being drilled to walk in lockstep. And every time someone steps out of line or out of bounds, they get hit. It's watching these men who are being taught to move in lockstep and seeing that they don't have proper footwear. The shoes don't fit right. The clothes don't fit right. The guards are uncaring and on full discipline, just ready to pounce.
Does this remind you of Dunning?
I have no idea what Dunning is, Doctor.
Dunning?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, the asylum.
Oh. No, that does... No, what I remember about Dunning was a door.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But Dunning was a mental asylum, wasn't a prison.
Wasn't a prison. Torture is torture.
You continue your pathway down all the way to a smaller rectangular building, I guess, that kind of end caps this portion of the prison. And then the path sweeps to the left. You get a nice view of the Hudson River. And then that path goes directly to a square building with another set of steps that go up and then 2 doors. And guards on the outside of that as well.
Up we go.
Up we go.
Oof.
You stumble up the stairs as best you can.
I lean heavily on the rail.
There are definitely rails.
Good.
One of the guards that's at the door, he opens the door for you instead of you having to open it yourself.
Dankeschön.
Inside, there's a small receiving area where there's a gentleman waiting for you. You two here to see Adams?
Yes, sir.
I'm George Brunton.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brunton. My name is Dr. Sigmund Tattenbach. This is my associate, Mr. Forsyth.
I'm sub-warden here. You picked a heck of a time to see Adams, I'll tell you that.
Why is that?
It's not been a good day. He turns around.
For Adams or for everyone?
You'll see.
George
Brunton. As you walk down through this area, you begin to get your first up-close look at Sing Sing's cells. Each one is roughly 4 feet deep, 3 feet wide. There is no space to walk, to stretch. The men that you pass in these cells, they have to sit on their bed to use the small 1 foot by maybe 1.5 foot desk to do any sort of work on. They each have their own light, but they're oil lamps at best. The walls themselves are not smooth stone. They're hewn like limestone. And so they're pitted and cracked and sharp.
Therefore, you can't lean against
No,
them. There's no comfort
cannot.
there.
The only smooth part is the floor. And that's a relative smoothness.
Right.
So
paid to not go to Sing Sing is what you're saying. Essentially.
absolutely. Just to give you a little bit of background on the place, when they first developed the whole lockstep walking discipline technique, there were men that were at Sing Sing that within 3 days of arriving committed suicide.
Yep.
Because they could not take it mentally.
And then physically too, because if you fall out of step and then you get hit, it's harder to get in step.
Correct.
The next time, because physical punishment never works when you have to do physical tasks afterwards.
Brunton keeps a fair amount of closeness with the two of you. You can hear him talking over your shoulder. You're going to have 30 minutes, maximum. No passing objects to the prisoner. Anything I don't hear, I stop the conversation immediately. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Is there a chance, could we get pencil, some paper?
Absolutely not.
Don't worry. I have a good memory for things. I will remember them.
You approach a cell in the middle of the block. You can hear the din of voices in the distance, but the one thing you have not heard much of in this prison are prisoners' voices. You don't hear shouting and yelling. You don't hear people groaning. You barely hear people talking. You know there are people here because you've passed them on the way, but they are not speaking.
That silence would be enough to drive someone insane, too.
Yeah, that is horrifying in and of itself.
He stops at a cell and with his billy club taps on the rail a couple of times. You see the bars. Adams, come forward. His voice echoes in here. And that light din of background you heard poofs and goes still silent when they hear the subwarden's voice. You see a mostly fit African-American man approach the cell. He's wearing traditional prison stripes, including a hat, a shirt, pants, and it looks like he has reasonably fitted shoes. Hilton Adams' face wears the weight of months in a prison system that is waiting to get the opportunity to put him to death. I help you, gentlemen?
Mr. Adams, we talked to your wife. She sent us to you.
You see Subwarden Brutton essentially take 2 steps back. He removes a pocket watch from his pocket, opens it, and then closes it with a click.
I'll be brief. Has anyone told you that more murders are happening in Harlem?
No, I hadn't heard anything about it. I mean, I would shake your hand, of course, but he kind of looks back beyond towards the warden is. But
We understand.
I don't think the warden would appreciate it.
A friend of ours was murdered at the Hotel Chelsea. It was the same pattern as the murders which you were arrested for.
He looks up, like a bit. What? How?
That is a wonderful question that we don't have the answer to. But we know that you and the Hellfighters were investigating.
Yeah, you could say that.
We need to hear what happened. We are trying to find the person who is actually responsible for this. And if that is the case, look over at the warden to make sure, he's listening. But
Yeah.
if that's the case, then you would be innocent, and we can remove you from this horrible place.
Well, where do you want me to start?
When the murder started, when did you start investigating?
I didn't really start investigating. We didn't start investigating for, I don't know, a couple of weeks until we saw that there were more than one. And we got worried. I mean, you got to understand, Harlem is a place where everybody's got family. We were just trying to make sure that everybody was going to be okay.
Was there any connection between the victims that you knew of?
No, that was the damnedest thing. The damnedest thing was that these murders would happen. It didn't matter who they were. It didn't matter what they did. It didn't matter how much money they had. It was like people at first, it felt like just people were being picked off. And that's why I got the boys together and we started doing rounds.
What did you see on your rounds?
I mean, for the most part, we would just, you'd see petty stuff, people picking pockets and stuff like that. We tried to put a stop to that. We tried to make sure that people's stuff wasn't being stolen, people weren't breaking into houses. You got to understand, there ain't a whole lot of money in Harlem.
And not a lot of police attention.
Not the kind you want.
When you were in Harlem and you were investigating these murders, how did you know where to look?
Well, they got started back when I got from... They got started when I got back from the war. Must have been, I don't know, 6 years ago or so. And that's when they really first popped up. And you got to understand, we live in Harlem. Millie and I. Mm-hmm. Or at least I did. I got to believe they've been going on for longer than that. I had to believe they've been going on for a while. Once we noticed that something was funny, I gathered those boys up and we started doing rounds, just like we would normally do during the war. You mark out places mentally on your map and you start doing patrols. I mean, I don't know if either one of you served, but it just became second nature. Mm. It just became something you did.
I described the symbol of the cult of the bloody tongue.
That is the symbol that we found carved into the forehead of our friend.
Yeah. You know, that's the damnedest thing, too. They said I took and I carved that symbol into that man's forehead with my knife. But the thing is I never took the bolo out with me. I knew better. I mean, people were getting murdered. I wasn't bringing a knife to a gunfight. When they picked me up, I had my pistol on me. I didn't take a knife with me at all.
Well, they said that they found a knife on you, but I assumed that...
No. Those cops in the 14th, they're all dirty to a man, I'm guaranteeing.
Do you know a Captain Robeson?
Robeson? Yeah, I know him. I'd love to have a crack at him, let me put it that way.
Watch yourself. I just remind Adams and look at the prison bars.
Thing is, though, you said he got murdered at the Chelsea Hotel. Your friend, Jackson?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jackson Elias.
Chelsea Hotel isn't in Harlem.
No, it's not. And that's another issue.
All the other murders happen in Harlem. So it breaks that whole rhythm.
It does. It doesn't fit in with the rest of the pattern.
That symbol we found is from a cult in Africa.
Okay.
Were there any recent people in the neighborhood? You knew most everybody in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any recent people in the neighborhood from Africa?
Recent arrivals?
No, not recent, but there was this one time. The only place I could figure out that had ties to something like that would be that import-export place.
The Juju House.
Yeah, I followed a guy back there for a while.
I heard that there were other people who were also going to that place too.
Including police officers.
Well,
yeah.
I grimace at the fact that he just says it so openly because he's doing it right in front of a warden.
You know, the thing is, before the cops picked me up that night, I followed a guy back there. Must have been in his 40s. Shaved head.
White man, black man?
African, for sure. I followed him from there to a coffee shop. It was on 139th 6th Avenue, above Fat Maples, so to speak.
Do you know the name of the coffee shop?
He gives it to you.
What did he do after he got there? Or did you not go in after it?
I sat and watched him just for a good long while. I don't think he saw me. But nobody was real keen to talk to him. Everybody was, trying to steer clear of him, that's for sure. I did pick up his name, though.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Mukunga Umdari. Now, that's as African as it gets.
That is...
Mukunga...
Umdari?
Mukunga Umdari.
Umdari.
And I wasn't the only one who was worried about the Juju house. Nita Han Johnson, one of the Hellfighters with me, he was worried about the Juju house too. I never got a chance to tell him about this Umdari guy because I got picked up.
Your friends from the Hellfighters, they still hang out at Teddy's Saloon?
Yeah, should. I mean, as long as they're still
That
around.
you know of.
Yeah.
Good.
They don't make many stops in here.
What was his friend's name again? I'm sorry.
The person he mentioned was Needham Johnson.
Okay.
Mr. Adams, we wish to speak to your friends in the Hellfighters. Is there something that you can tell us that will gain their trusts? That we are helping you? We have a limited amount of time. Not just now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, you tell him, You tell him we didn't fight for France.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there anything else you wish to speak to him about, Mr. Forsyth?
Were they continuing the patrols, do you know?
I hope so. I hope so. I got to tell you, I don't know. To be perfectly honest, I mean, those boys, listen, they're smart and they're courageous and all that. They went through literal hell during the war. But they also probably know that if they do too much investigating around Harlem and uncover too many stones, that they're likely to end up in here. I believe that the reason why I'm in here is because I got too close to whatever was going on out there.
What did you see that last night? Was it just that man? And then you found a body.
Yeah, I found the body.
Where was the body?
The body was in Harlem. It was
Where at in Harlem?
West 137th Street, between Lenox Avenue and Harlem River. It's about a rough 1 mile circle was where all these killings happened at. So it's got to be around there.
But this Mdare, he couldn't have done it because he was, you had him in sight the whole time.
Well, maybe he didn't kill that one, but maybe he was responsible for some of these others.
So when did you find it after you went to the coffee shop and watched this man at the coffee shop? Where did you go from there?
Well, that's when I followed him out of the coffee shop.
Into the Juju house?
No, I lost him in an alleyway. And soon after that, maybe 10 minutes or so after doing some, left and rights down some of these alleys, that's when I found this body. All cut up, all mangled. And then, wouldn't you know it,
Surprise, surprise.
the police show up.
But you didn't hear any screaming, any noise, any commotion?
No.
Was there blood on the ground?
Oh, yeah.
Lots
Tons.
of it? Means
Yeah.
it was probably killed there. But if there was no screaming, it means it was sudden. Which is odd.
Not really. Stick a man in the right place with a knife, he doesn't get a chance to talk, to say anything.
This is true. This is true.
Mr. Adams, we're doing our best.
I appreciate that.
Hopefully we can get you out of this.
And Mr. Adams, Millie sends her regards. Her truest regards. I only wish that she could be here herself.
She can't handle coming and seeing me.
Truth be told, Mr. Adams, if somebody had told me what I would have experienced coming here, I don't know if I would have been as eager to do so. You are a strong man. Remain that way. We will do everything we can.
Thank you.
And I assume that the warden at this point looks rather pointedly at his watch.
No, actually, what the sub-warden does is he taps on the bar with his club, and when you don't immediately move because you wouldn't know to, he says, "This way, gentlemen, now." As you move back down towards the direction you came in, give me a listen roll.
I'm going to fail this so hard.
Oh, I did not, sir. That is an extreme success.
Ah.
That is a 611.
Holy shit, I made it 12 out of 31, so that's a hard.
You both hear the subwarden say, "The captain will love to hear this."
So the subwarden's in on this too. God damn it!
I mean, draw your own conclusions, of course,
Yeah.
but
I'm sure he will. As we walk.
you exit the prison after a long and rather painful
I
walk
think I'm rubbing
back.
off on him.
My hip is on fire by this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm practically carrying him.
You get to the train station, and even though it's cold, even though it is outside, you have to sit down on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way around it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Forsyth. I cannot go any further.
It's fine.
The two of you prepare to go back to New York City. It's about a 45-minute train ride.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, our other investigators, Mr. Doyle, Miss Lane, you are meeting up before going to DeTulio's. You have a meeting today with Erica Carlyle. Yes.
We do.
Okay. So, DeTulio's is in a nice downtown spot. It's an Italian restaurant, and it backs up against a couple of other relatively well-named buildings. Most of the Italian restaurants in New York City really are pretty small affairs. This one is not. This one has not only a couple of attachments to it, it's also bookended by a hotel. So there's definitely a lot of foot traffic, but it's also a fine dining restaurant. What time do you arrive?
Our meeting with Ms. Carlyle is at 3 o'clock,
That's right.
so we probably arrive about 10 after. You're riding with me.
I know.
Okay. You arrive about 10 after. You get seated. The staff make sure that you get a back table. It's not so much a private room as it is a back table which has a couple of different columns nearby. They're wrapped in wood and whatnot, and mahogany and stuff like that, but it's not so much a private room as it is a relatively private space.
Secluded.
Yes.
So are we saying she is not here yet?
She is not here yet.
She
one-upped you, Miss Lane.
took a number right out of my book.
That's right. You get seated, and as you are preparing to kind of go through the menu and get some refreshments, you see a attractive, probably mid to late 30s woman with bright blonde bobbed hair and a fur coat walk in. She makes her own waves as she walks through the restaurant and towards the table. Behind her is a slight man with graying temples and black hair on top. And then behind him is a very large man, probably around 6'6" to 6'8". And he is both men are well dressed, but it's fairly obvious to you, Mr. Doyle, the larger man has a singular profession.
Mm-hmm.
He is there to do things if necessary. Erica Carlyle and the man with her enter the space, and she gestures to you. Miss Lane, how are you?
Just fine, Miss Carlyle. How are you doing?
She genuflects toward you a bit, like not to hug you per se, but to give you a social woman's hello, right?
I stand to greet her.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
She nods to you, Mr. Doyle, and then kind of turns a bit to her accompaniment. This is Mr. Gray. You spoke on the phone with him.
We did. Nice to see you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, Miss Lane.
This is Mr. Doyle. He's an associate of mine.
Mr. Doyle. So, Mr. Gray says, perhaps you could tell me a bit about this expedition to the Far East you were discussing?
Time to turn on the bullshit.
Squeak, squeak, squeak. Bullshit faucet on.
I was trying to make something up as I went along.
Yes, I know, and now we'll see how you do.
Yes. Yes, our expedition to Shanghai. There is some curious tombs there that we'd like to inspect or get to.
You see Gray kind of consider it.
There are supposedly some tablets in these tombs that could be worth quite a bit of money.
The waitstaff comes and brings a bottle of wine, several glasses, and starts pouring. You see Erica hold her hand up at about halfway, and the waitstaff stop immediately. So, tell me, what do you hope to gain by going to Shanghai? The tablets? Perhaps an international incident?
Well, while money is nice, as you all know, honestly, it's for educational purposes that I'm interested in them.
See, I find this whole thing puzzling, she says.
Why is that?
Well, I must tell you, Lillian, I'm a bit taken aback that we would even need to be in consideration. It's well known to me and well known to Gray and probably half of New York how well your family does. Why you would need my help in putting together money for an expedition seems very strange at all. It's not like you don't have the money for it. If you want an expedition, simply go.
So, what I need are resources.
And what kind?
Not that I want to dredge anything up for you, but there was an expedition a while back to Kenya.
You see Gray put his hands up. Miss Lane, this is not what we discussed on the phone. We were not discussing Roger. We were not discussing...
I don't want to discuss Roger. I want to discuss his expedition.
We don't even necessarily want to discuss his expedition. There's more than one expedition we're embarking on. One will be going to Shanghai, but first we'll be stopping in Kenya.
You see Gray he furrows his brow. Excuse me, who are you again?
Mr. Doyle, I'm in charge of the physical oversight of the expedition.
The physical oversight. Now, in what parameters exactly, Mr. Doyle? Be specific, please.
There are certain things that have to be taken care of. Resources, supplies, security, the like. Much of what I was in charge of in a Peru expedition a couple of years ago.
I see. It sounds like something more like what Joe would do. You see him gesture to the man that makes a better door than a window that's standing in the lone entryway into this, kind of quiet area in the back of the restaurant.
I believe Joe there is more suited towards blocking light than leading
Doyle.
expeditions.
Mr. Doyle offers more services than Joe does.
Do me a favor, Jake. Make me a...
Told you not to get into fights.
I'm not getting into a fight. Well, I might be getting into it.
Make me a appearance roll.
Uh-oh.
Appearance?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Oh, look at that. I got a hard.
You hear Erica laugh. That's very funny, Mr. Doyle. Interesting. She kind of gestures just with a simple and probably well-oiled hand to Gray. Just a simple wave of her hand. And you see Gray go from very prominent at the table to sitting back just immediately. So, You have some questions you'd like answered.
Yes. We understand, obviously, it's a dangerous undertaking because of what happened to your ill-fated brother.
There's nothing there.
I have no doubt you're correct. But anything you may have that could give us forewarning on what we might stumble across? Papers, journals, letters, anything. May save some lives.
You know, I'm surprised, Miss Lane, that you had not run into Roger years before. He was the sort of man who was a part of every social gathering, whether he was invited or not. He amazed me with his ability to debase himself socially in public. And I find it very interesting that you would be at all interested in an expedition which killed not only him, but several members, several friends of his. What is so interesting?
We were originally brought here by another man. Brought all together. A man who was recently murdered.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
And this murdered man may have connections to what happened in Kenya. Or the murderers, more likely.
You never did find out who killed your brother.
I took the word of the Kenyan authorities that the tribesmen that they found and deemed responsible for Roger and the deaths of his expedition mates, I took them at their word. I waited. I watched them build the gallows, and I waited until they hung them. And then I came home. I saw it through as far as I could.
You really do think there is a connection between your brother's expedition, the man, and several other murders that have occurred? We would really appreciate any documentation you might be able to offer us.
Why don't you make me a persuade roll, Miss Lane? And impress me.
Or not.
Spend a force point.
You can't spend force points. Different game.
I'd like to spend a will.
Wait, we're not allowed to be playing force users? Uh-oh.
I got 47, and my persuade is at a 60.
That's good.
Yay!
I tell you what. Why don't we continue our dinner? I'll answer a couple of your questions, and we can try to keep this a nice and reasonable social call. Does that seem fair?
It's more than fair.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you, for the past several years, most of the people that I interact with know better than to ask about Roger. Gray makes sure of it. Now, provided we have a nice dinner and I can answer a couple of your questions. I like you, Mr. Doyle. I think you're funny. I think maybe you and some of your compatriots, because I assume there's more than 2 of you going to Shanghai.
Indeed.
If you are even going to Shanghai.
It's very likely.
Perhaps you'll come to a party that I'm having on the 24th. It's at my estate. It's a morning party. A friend of mine is assisting me with putting it on. His name is Otto Kern. He's a wonderful man. Miss Lane, you would know who he is. He's somebody who's deep into railroads, which makes sense of why he would be palling around with Erica Carlyle, because she's an import-export sort of person. He is a German-born, now naturalized U.S. citizen who is exceedingly generous with his work with the poor and the sick. He's very philanthropic.
Yeah.
The party starts around 8 o'clock in the morning.
What's the dress code for your party?
What's the dress? Well, something spectacular. These things only happen once in a while, so the men at the university tell me. We're going to be celebrating something very special. Have you not read about it?
I can't say that I have. I've been very busy lately.
Well, later this week, there's going to be a solar eclipse.
Ooh.
Oh.
So, the waiters come back with appetizers and food eventually. What can I answer for you?
What was your brother looking for in Kenya?
Secrets. Lost artifacts. It's more in line that he was looking for whatever that African Benet woman told him to look for. She was a piece that sauntered in, and the left and right directions her hips would shake. That is where Roger's eyes went.
Like she was here.
Yes, she spent lots of time actually with Roger here. She's the reason he's dead.
Is she still here?
No, she accompanied him and the rest of his foolhardy crusade to London and then Egypt and then God knows where.
So was she among the deceased?
That's what the Kenyan government said.
That doesn't mean they were telling the truth.
I honestly couldn't tell you, Lillian.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I could tell you that I don't spend nights wondering if Roger's really alive or if he's really dead. But I'll tell you this much. If he wandered through that door right now, I would have Joe break every bone in his body after what he did to me.
Did you
That's
ever
fair.
see a body?
No.
Okay.
He had changed. He had stopped making public appearances for about a year.
If you mean that he went on booze-fueled benders all night with his African tribeswoman plaything, then yes.
So that started about the same time this Benet woman came into his life.
Well, Roger was always a playboy. Always. He was always getting into something. He was always squandering something that my family built, that our family built.
You know, as tragic as it is, it seems like the business fell into the proper hands finally.
The business has been saved. Luckily. So, Mr. Doyle, tell me something about yourself.
Anything?
Like, where'd you get the scar?
In France.
You know, our trips to France have been quite different.
Well, it was a different time.
Yes, I believe it. Yeah, Roger went over overseas with his groups, his pals that he'd picked up along the way. These people he'd either coerced or sold on the idea that they were going to find something spectacular.
You do a lot of expeditions over in Europe?
Roger?
Yeah.
No, he failed his way around the universities of the United States until He, I don't know, after his fourth or fifth one, decided that he was going to retire a man of 25 to 26 years into his lap of luxury with the Carlyle estate money for him to spend. That was his decision. That was his big decision in life. He lasted 6 months between Harvard, Yale, USC, Miskatonic, kicked out of every single one of them.
When did he meet his lover? Was he still in school then, or was it after school?
No, it was after school. That Benet woman didn't come here until before they left.
Was it her idea to go to on the expedition to Kenya?
Absolutely. Well,
doesn't strike me that it would have been his.
the expedition didn't first go to
Well,
Kenya.
they went to
to
London.
Cairo.
They went to Cairo and London, and
Their-
then Kenya. Correct.
Their aim was to go to Cairo because of everything that was going on in the news with the excavations already underway.
So they go to Cairo first and then to Kenya.
I believe so, yeah.
They didn't go to London in between.
Well, they went to London
Okay.
and then I was just
Okay.
well. It sounds like they didn't find what they were looking for in Cairo, so they followed some clues to Kenya.
The food is pretty good. The wine is good. And so is all of the associated, appetizers and whatnot. You have a pretty good meal. Erica doesn't eat very much. She tends to pick for the most part. It appears that she's someone who's very careful about what she eats. And Gray does eventually not come back into conversation, but he does eventually sit back forward a bit.
Did your brother ever mention a place called Juju House?
No?
Okay.
Never heard of it. What is it?
It's specifically an African import-export.
No, I'm sorry. I've never heard of it. Either one of you could roll psychology if you'd like.
If you succeed on it, though, you get to put points in it.
Right.
That's not hard, but I did succeed.
You got to succeed at it, though.
Yeah.
So it appears to you, Mr. Doyle, that after the meal conversation and after this woman she's mentioned twice, Benet, has come up, you're fairly certain that Erica Carlyle has a well-oiled, kind of cultivated aristocratic vein of racism.
No,
Like any good American.
well, it's the 20s.
In the 20s.
This is a little different. Just in the way that when she's talked about Benet, she has some definitive tendencies to continue to down-talk her, to treat her as an interloper, that sort of thing.
Was Miss Benet from Africa, or was she local?
No, she was not local. Although Roger never allowed her to spend much time around me. He was very protective of her. She came in with the wind and the rain one day, just like any other African storm, and deposited herself on our doorstep, and all of a sudden Roger gave her every benefit and every advantage that he could possibly hurl at her. And she scooped the rest of them up, and then eventually they were whisked across the Atlantic.
Sounds like he was besotted or bewitched, so to speak.
Did they ever talk about where they met? Or did he ever talk about where they met?
No, it was weird. He went from occasionally bringing her around to going days on end without being at the estate. And then one day, I remember he was packing up and he was preparing. It looked like he was preparing for a trip. It was the first I was hearing about it. And then the morning paper hit the Carlyle estate, and they brought it up to us at breakfast. And all of a sudden, I'm reading in the social papers about my brother going on some massive expedition. He didn't talk about any of it with me. We didn't discuss it. Roger was in charge of everything. Except that Roger was in charge of nothing. He didn't know what being in charge meant.
Do you know where this Miss Benet stayed when she was in town?
Yeah, I do know where she stayed at. Roger's bedroom.
I'll write that down.
When they were there. When they weren't there, I couldn't tell you. I know that Dr. What's his name? She looks at Gray. Gray says, Dr. Hudson. Yes, Dr. Hudson. They occasionally spent time at Dr. Hudson's office. I mean, it's closed now, but...
Hanging out at the doctor's office. That's weird.
Right? Who would do something like that?
All right, go on.
They spent some time there. And,
Obviously, criminals.
Did Dr. Hudson go with him?
well, yes. Hudson, Penhew, Masters, and then his friend Jack Brady.
Did Roger have any other friends who didn't go with?
That were around him for a considerable amount of time that I can remember?
Close enough to...
No, he took all of his... I say close friends. That's not what I mean. They're not close friends.
Hangers on.
I think so. I think every single one of them, including that damn Benet woman, I think that she was there just to suck whatever life she could out of Roger. And by that, I mean every single American dollar she could get.
What kind of doctor was Dr. Hudson?
He was a psychologist.
And, you know, a lot of times for expeditions, when they put expeditions together, they're looking for something in particular. On any of the paperwork that you saw, if you saw any paperwork, was there anything mentioned as to exactly what they were looking for?
No, Roger never included me in any of it. I mean, it wasn't mine, but you could always inquire with, I would imagine, New York City has some sort of record of what the doctor did. It's not really my area of expertise. You'd have to investigate that.
All right. Thank you for your time, Miss Carlyle.
You're welcome, Mr. Doyle. I look forward to seeing you at the estate.
I would be delighted to be there.
Hopefully you'll come armed with your quick wit.
Well, I try to come armed
He does.
to the occasion.
He really does.
She gets up. She says her goodbyes. Gray escorts her out. Joe, their third wheel, lingers a moment in the area after they leave and then follows them out.
See you later, Smiley.
He probably wasn't happy with you in the light blocking comment.
You had to make a comment.
So the two of you wrap up your dinner at DeTulio's and then go where?
Should we go back to the hotel, or
Um,
should we go?
what was
I'm
that?
not allowed to go
Took
to the
about an
Hellfire.
hour there or so.
What's that?
More.
Sorry.
An hour there, 2 hours, what?
Yeah, it's probably a good. It's probably been until it's probably a little after 4, give or take. So,
I don't know when the doctor and Forsyth will be back, but
well,
Never.
We should. Were you guys going to the Hellfighter stuff afterwards?
no, I thought they were
I
going
think
back to
we're
the hotel.
going
after.
back because I
Yeah,
think
we
should
were going
probably
to the
meet up
hotel.
with them at the
Yeah.
hotel and give them information.
So, around about 4:30, 5 o'clock or so, the four of you meet back up at the hotel. It's relatively speaking, it's about the same time, given the train ride, given your time at Sing Sing, but you're all there together.
I'm sitting with my legs up, my feet up.
The staff at the Hotel Gerard saw you come in a bit gimpy, and the maitre d' has ordered up he's ordered up a couple of things. One is a large amount of ice for you to potentially use if necessary, and he also brings up 2 large hot water bottles.
Oh, fantastic. I make sure to definitely tip the...
Oh, no, it's no trouble. We like to take care of our guests, please.
Dankeschön. Oh, I make use of both.
In tandem. So you guys, Mr. Doyle, Miss Lane, you two come in to
Do
the...
all women look alike? Is that it?
Right.
What are you trying to say? It is the 20s.
Right.
It's the 20s. All women look alike.
You come in to seeing the doctor a bit laid up there, and then I imagine Mr. Forsyth is probably going over paperwork or a map, given the street addresses that...
Yes. As a matter of fact, there's
Mr.
a map
Adams.
that I need to...
You should have it. Did I give it to you?
You gave it to me, but I gave it back to you because I didn't want to stick it in the box.
Give it, and we take it away.
What's in the box?
Big print giveth, small
Yes,
print
as
taketh
a matter
away.
of fact, I do have a couple of
There you go.
addresses.
There's your map of Bennett.
That's how it works.
Okay, so...
So how was your time in prison?
Unfortunate. That place was never... not meant for humans.
Yeah. It is prison.
We did speak to Mr. Adams. We got about what we were hoping for. We need to speak to the Hellfighters.
Well, we were planning going tonight, so...
Indeed. However, we have a phrase now to get them to trust us.
Oh, good.
We do not fight
wait
for
a minute.
friends,
Oh, yeah.
Wait one moment.
but that will help. That apparently will help us speak to them, which is what we need. He had some information, but nothing that we really didn't know already. He has no idea what the connections between the various people were. However, he did point out that the one, our friend, Mr. Elias, Jackson Elias, was the only one outside of Harlem that had been killed in such a ritual manner. Everyone else had been inside of Harlem, which means that whoever is doing this most likely is inside of Harlem as well.
Yes.
And beyond that, he did say that the Juju house was... it seemed to come back to that.
Keeps coming back to that.
He also mentioned a bald individual, hairless man, who he had...
His name was Mukunga Umdari. And
Mukunga Umdari.
he said that he was...
A bald-headed man in his 40s.
He also said he was of African descent,
African
not
descent.
Middle Eastern.
African descent.
Yeah, I would
that's
be
what it was.
surprised if somebody named him Mukamba.
Umdari.
Umdari is Middle Eastern.
Middle Eastern. Yeah, he said he was of African descent.
Probably Kenyan.
It would not surprise me. But he had spent much time in the Juju house.
Figure out how this map fits
So that
together.
is Umdari is most likely Kenyan. And he keeps returning. He said he was returning to the Juju house over and over, and even followed him there at one point. And so that seems to be definitely our next place to go, other than to speak to the Hellfighters themselves, who we were already planning on speaking to.
Right.
We have a complication. It appears that the subwarden who led us to Adams's cell knows the captain,
Ah, yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Shaggy.
and did mention where he thought we couldn't hear that the captain will be interested in hearing everything we said to Adams.
I think we
So
have.
they'll be waiting for us.
I think we have to assume, from this point on, that if the police are involved in any fashion, it's not going to be good. The Captain Robeson was his name.
Yes.
Captain Robeson, everywhere we turn, other than to Juju House, seems to be the other factor that we run into.
Well, you already did make a visit to Mr. Doyle. He seems to like him.
Yeah, we got along swimmingly.
That seems to happen a lot with you, Mr. Doyle, and authority figures.
Miss Carlyle was quite taken with him at lunch.
Oh, was she?
Well,
How did that go, by the way?
we found out a little information. We had to pretty well let her in on what we were doing.
She was
they-
canny then.
Yes, she is. She's not a fool.
Good. I'm done with dealing with fools.
That being said, we have a little soiree we have been invited to, all of us.
Really?
Yes.
When was that?
A solar eclipse party on the 24th.
Solar
In the morning.
eclipse party.
And nothing could go wrong with
Solar
that.
eclipse.
Yeah, that doesn't seem foreboding at all.
No.
No, not at all.
But you do have to wear your Sunday best.
Perhaps I will pick up new Sunday best.
Good idea.
We are in New York. I have not had time to go shopping yet.
There's plenty of places to shop.
There's a
There's
store.
more than just this.
We have passed a store or two.
What's that mean?
Nothing.
She just gestured to all of you.
Nothing.
My hip is killing me.
You seem to have a lot of ice going on there.
Lift the shirt a little bit and show an old gunshot wound, like a scar of a gunshot wound. Something had happened to me in my youth. It does not make for walking very easily, unfortunately.
I suppose not.
Okay.
Stick around, you'll get some wounds too.
Great.
On that note, I am going to close this episode, unless Mr. Forsyth, you have anything specific. I see you poring over the map of New York.
Well, we can talk about that.
Okay, fair enough. So I want to thank everybody for listening and sharing and subscribing to us on one of many, many podcast networks that are out there. We do enjoy getting your feedback, so please give us some feedback. Tell us how the show was. Tell us what you'd like to see. And then maybe even tell us what you're hoping will happen as we get into deeper and deeper into Masks of Nyarlathotep. We'll see you next week.